Alright, so for today, you're going to download a zip file that has 50 images in it. I'll unzip it. There we go. So this Automate Images folder has 50 little images from a photographer who's done wildlife photography. You're going to edit all 50 of these images, and they're going to be due by the end of class today. Here's the catch. I'm going to show you how you can do this in less than a minute. All 50 of them will be completely edited and in perfect working order. So what I'm going to do is first open up just one of the images and show you one of the things that you can do with it. What a lot of photographers like to do is they want to have their own website and they want to upload their photography to the website. But there's two challenges that they tend to face, and this is true for any designer, anybody who puts stuff online. If you're going to put your work online, you never ever want to put a high resolution image of your work online. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Somebody will copy it, somebody will steal it, yeah. Somebody says, hey, that's a cool logo, I'm just going to take it as mine. And if it's high enough resolution, they can reproduce it.
And it also takes a long time to load.
Yeah, that's another thing. Especially if you're on your cell phone, you want to load up really quickly. We did portfolio reviews for the interior design people, and that was a common problem. They put images of their work online, and it took forever for their website to load because it was like 300 DPI or 600 resolution. Here's how you can change the size and resolution of any photograph that you have. If you'll go up to Image, down to Image Size, if you hadn't found this before, this is your dialog box. It'll show you the pixel dimensions and give you an idea of the size of it. In this case, it's about 2 megabytes. Here's the document dimensions of it. So if you wanted to change up the size of it, we're going to make these much smaller. Actually, let me pass out your info. Sorry about that. Passing those around. For these images, they're going to be, I want to make sure I do it correctly for you. 3 inches wide. I've got constrained proportions checked off, so when I do that, notice you got the little link in between both of them. So when I change up the width of it, it also changes up the height of it proportionally too. If you didn't have it constrained, then it'll make your image skewed off as well. We're also going to drop down the resolution of it from 240 to 150. I actually read an article. Usually the rule of thumb was if you have screen resolution, it's to be 72 dots per inch. With a lot of the high resolution displays, like on the iPad and the iPod, 150 is the new lowest resolution that you're going to want to save stuff as. Also, just kind of as a best practice, make sure resampling is turned on. This keeps your images from being pixelated and distorted when you shrink them down or expand them out. And you can choose different types of resampling. I just choose automatic because I don't know what the difference between all the rest of them. When I hit OK, it's going to resize your image. It's just going to make it smaller. And this will work for the same thing. If you want to make it bigger or smaller, that's where you would go to resize it. The second thing photographers like to do is they like to add a watermark to whatever image that they've created. So what's a watermark?
A watermark is a string thing across it so that nobody can plagiarize it.
Yeah, exactly. It's putting their logo or putting their name somewhere, usually lightly, on top of your image. So if someone does copy it, they're copying your name and your logo as well, and they can't reproduce it. Here's how you can create a simple watermark. I'm going to grab my text tool. I'm going to place it at the top left-hand corner of our screen. Just going to click once. I'm going to type out, say, copyright. By the way, to type the copyright symbol, it's Option G. 2013, and this is going to be Suncoast Photography. Alright, so I've got the name up there. What I want to do is, I don't want it to be so obvious that it's up there. I want it to be a little bit more opaque. So I'm going to add a drop shadow to it. Go to FX, choose drop shadow. And I'm just going to make a simple drop shadow underneath it. Distance, 0, spread, we'll say 10 pixels, size, 11 pixels looks good. Here's the fun thing. I'm going to say OK. Still, that's extremely obvious. What I want to do is just show the drop shadow and not show any of my text. I want the text to be transparent. If you go over to your layers palette, you've got two options, the opacity and the fill opacity. Dropping the opacity is going to drop the opacity of everything that's on the layer, including your drop shadow. I'm going to drop the fill opacity. I'm going to zoom back out. Watch what happens to the text when I drop that down. The fill opacity only affects the letters that are on the, or the pixels that are on the layer, not any of the effects. So what it leaves me with is, it looks like just the drop shadow and none of the text that's on top of it as well. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the fill opacity essentially does. If you ever just want to have an effect on a layer, drop the fill opacity, keep the regular opacity at 100%, and that's the way you can do it that way. So with this, I can flatten it, and this is what I want you to do to all 50 images that we're going to work on.
How you flatten it again?
How to flatten it? If you go to your Layers palette, hit the upper right-hand corner, at the very bottom, one of them is Flatten Image. I think, no, not Command F. There's a hotkey, but I forgot what it was. So here's how you can quickly do this through 50 images. I'm going to close this one out and not save it. I'll open up another one. I'm going to do the same steps over again, but instead, one second, I'm going to open up a palette. If you go to Window, make sure your Actions palette is open. I'll drag it off here so we can see it. The Actions palette is a way of recording every action that you perform on an image. And once it's recorded, you can play it back and it will re-loop over whatever document that you're working on. So here's how to do it. With Actions opened up, at the very bottom, I'm going to click on the Create a New Action. So clicking on that, it's going to ask you to give it a name. So I'm just going to call this action, let's see, Web Save. You can assign this action to a function key, the little F1, F2 keys up at the top. So I'm just going to assign it to F1. Then I'm going to hit record. Notice the record button's going down here. Now, everything that I do is the computer's going to remember exactly what I want it to do. So I'm going to go to Image, adjust the image size. We said make it 3 inches wide by however many tall. Change the resolution to 150. I'll say OK. So I've changed the size of it. I'm going to grab my type tool, type out copyright, Option G, 2013 Suncoast Photography, and I'm going to apply my drop shadow to this one. And also bump down the fill. So now I've got it nice and set up. Last thing I need to do is to flatten it. File and flatten. Very good. Going back over to the Actions panel, you can look and see, here's Web Save that I've created. There's the F1 key that I've assigned it to. There's where I changed the image size, made the new text layer, set the layer styles, changed the current layer, and then I flattened the image. Once I'm done doing everything that I want to do, I'm going to hit the stop button at the very end. Very important that you hit the stop button, because if you forget, it's going, whatever you do, it's going to remember it. Even if you save a file or close out a file, open a file, it's going to remember all that you've done. So I'm going to save this one out again. Now, not even going to save it. I can open up, say, 4 images into Photoshop. Remember, I saved this to F1. So I'm going to compress F1, you have to hold down the function key. Automatically, in one click, it's resized it and set Suncoast Photography up to there. All I have to do is save it and go on. I can go to the next image, F1, resizes it, and places the image up there over and over again. Pretty cool?
Yeah, I want to ask a question.
Yeah?
I remember batch
Yeah? Batch processing?
processing. Can you not just assign a folder and do that to all of them?
I am so glad you asked. Let me show you how to do that. Okay? What she's referring to is, rather than me having to open up every one of these one at a time, it'd be great if I can just say, hey, Photoshop, look at this folder and do this to every image that's inside of that folder. Here's how you can do it. There's actually a great new little feature called creating a droplet. And here's how you can do this. You can actually create like a little mini program that will do this automatically. Go to File, down to Automate, and choose Create Droplet. There's batch. We're not going to do that. We're going to create a droplet.
Create droplet.
Create droplet. This is going to give you a dialog box. Now this looks a little confusing. Just take it one thing at a time. First thing you got to do is we're going to make a droplet. The droplet's going to be like, think of it as a mini application. We need to choose where you want to save it. So I'm going to hit Choose. We're going to call this, what do I ask you to call it? I want to make sure I'm following everything that I'm telling you all how to do. Set the opacity, record and save the file. Here it is. Make web ready. So make web ready. making these images web ready. We're going to save it to the desktop. Choose Save. The second thing it's going to ask you to do, what action do you want to play? By default, it's chosen that web save action, the one that I just created. And it's going to look at opening up all the images, and that's what these allow you to do. If you have any images inside of a folder, and maybe there's a folder inside of there, you can include subfolders. Sometimes if you've ever opened up an image and it gives you like a color warning, or there's some problem opening up an image, you can suppress any warnings that happen. I usually keep both of those checked off. The second most important thing is, where are you going to save it to? I want you to save this to a folder. So I'm going to jump back to my desktop and just create a new folder. And I'm going to call this folder Images to Upload. Oops. Going back into Photoshop. So the destination, you can just tell it to save and close the images or not to do anything. We're going to choose a folder, so hit Choose. And on the desktop, there's the Images to Upload folder that I've created. Yeah. Hit Choose. All right, so it's going to save it to that folder. We don't have a Save As command, so don't worry about it. The last thing I want you to do is, when you save it, you can also have an option to rename the files. In uploading them, this keeps it a great way of keeping everything in order. And this is where you can save the file name and the extension to it. In our case, I want you to save it as a serial number, 3-digit serial number. So as it opens one of them, it saves it as 001. The next image would be 002, 003, so on and so forth. You can do a 2-digit, 1-digit. You can just save the document name or the date, whatever you want to do. For mine, we're going to keep it a 3-digit serial number plus the extension. So 001 JPEG. Last thing I want you to do. Sometimes there may be an error that happens when it tries to open a file. Like say you accidentally saved a text file in the folder. Well, if that text file is in there, it's going to give you an error and it's going to stop whatever it's doing. Instead of stopping, so stop for errors, I want you to log any errors to a file. And you have to say where you want to save that file. So I'm going to do Save As, and we're just going to choose the desktop and hit Save. And I'm going to replace it since I did it earlier. So that's how you have it set up. I've given you the step-by-step instructions, so real easy to find. I'll hit OK. All right, looks like it didn't do anything. If you'll go to your desktop, there's a new icon, has Photoshop and has a down arrow. It says Make Web Ready. This is a little program that you've created. All you have to do is drag the Automated Images folder on top of the Make Ready folder, and automatically it will open them up, and you can see it's processing one at a time through each one of them. It's opening it up, it's resizing it, and you may not be able to see it, but it's actually adding the text to the top of it. Actually, if you look over here, you can see it working. Adds the text, flattens it, closes it out. So in just a few seconds, I'm not having to do any of the work. It's doing all the work for me. And you can do this for anything that you want. If you want to do the same drawing in the same spot, if you need to adjust, you've got like tons of images, you need to adjust the levels for them, this is how you can automatically do it over and over again. Sometimes I create an action like if I have to rotate a canvas, like if I've taken a bunch of photographs and some of them I know are portrait and I need to rotate them back to landscape, then I can create an action that will automatically rotate it for me. That way I just hit a button rather than having to go up to a file menu.
That's new, that little icon.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep, that's a new thing. I think they started that in CS5, maybe 4.
Okay.
I know they have it in 5.
It's like I used to do batch processing,
Mm-hmm.
but then it like disappeared. I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Really? Okay.
That's why I asked you.
Okay, it's still there. They
For
just kind of updated it a little bit. All right, so it seems to be done. Let's go into our Images Uploads folder. And here they all are. Notice that the names of them, they're now renumbered, all in sequential order. I can open up any one of these, and they've been resized, and they've got the watermark on top of them. So all you have to do this to one of them and save it as an action, then create a droplet and let Photoshop do the rest of it. To turn these in, all you're going to do is compress the file, and then upload the zip file to Moodle. Any questions? All right. So that was your exercise for today.